a funeral to go to. So we're going to start with Karen and do your trilogy.
Sure.
And after that, Elaine Ostrander will accompany us with banjo and America the Beautiful.
God bless America.
God bless America. Okay, Karen.
I didn't know I was going first.
Oh, I told you that.
I thought Lisa was going first.
Would you rather somebody else go
No,
first?
no, I'm okay.
Do you want to sit? Stand?
No, I'm right here.
Stand with your mic.
Oh, no, nobody needs to hear me on the mic. This land is your land, and sing along. This land is my land, from California to New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I went walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. Now this is a verse that we wrote, but rarely performed. But I heard Arlo do it. As I went walking that ribbon of highway, I saw before me. No, as I went walking, I saw a sign there, and on that sign it said no trespassing. But on the other side, it didn't say nothing. This side was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to New York Islands, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Now, we all came together on 9/11, our whole country.
Use the mic. Some of us can't hear very well.
We all came together after 9/11, our whole country. Now, 20 years ago, that was a wonderful, it was a horrible feeling, but it was wonderful how we all embraced each other. Now, in the last 10 years, it's been a little scary as we separate more and more. And so this is a song that was written long before 9/11, but I feel it more and more. Go for it. If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, I'd hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out warning, I'd hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. If I had a bell,
asked her to come back when there's more people here this
You
afternoon.
are from Harlingen, it hasn't been in the obits, but Robin Wilkins died last weekend, and his memorial service is at 11 in the Congregational Church.
He was a selectman, is that correct?
Yes, he was.
Yes.
And Joan is his wife.
Yes, Joan Anderson, who's a writer, and it's a very heartbreaking situation. Also, there's a card over here for Marianne O'Neil. She is an amazing artist. Unfortunately, she is back in the hospital for the 8th time this year. She was extremely excited about showing her work. We ended up picking up her work yesterday afternoon, meeting her husband and picking it up and getting it set up. There's a card of Get Well, and there's a picture of Marianne, those of you who don't know her, but a nice word of get well soon and appreciation for her art would really make a lot of difference to her. So we're going to see a couple more people coming in, and we'll see you later, Karen.
Okay.
All right, take care, Karen.
Thanks,
Thank
Karen.
you.
And Ruth and Bruce are coming in, and I'm going to ask now if Lisa would read her poetry, which hopefully she'll read again tomorrow in church.
Yes, love it.
Great, good. Lisa is a teacher from the Monomoy Regional High School, and I've asked her to read this incredible poem.
Normally I wouldn't need a mic. I'm one of the loudest people at Monomoy. My maiden name is Forte, so what does that tell you? I was born to be loud. Yes. 9/11 is a big deal to me. I'm from New York originally, the Bronx. My brother still lives in New York. My parents.
The Bronx, hey!
Yeah!
Hey, we're from the Bronx.
Oh, Grand Concourse.
Okay, Co-op City.
Oh.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
No
Go ahead,
problem.
we couldn't help ourselves.
My mother, I gotta tell you this, my mother always said, Co-op City, it ruined the concourse.
It did. A lot of people left the
Everybody
Bronx.
moved the concourse, they went to Co-op City.
That's right, that's true.
Anyway.
Sorry about that.
All the folks from up here are like, what are they talking
I know,
about?
I know.
So, make a long story short, when this happened, this was my city, this is where I worked for several years, this is, I had family and friends. My sister-in-law had just been working at the World Trade Center just a couple of years earlier. It was very, very upsetting to me. And my sons, who, even at a very young age, they were 4 and 9 at the time, they just, so super sensitive, they sensed what was going on. And everything I say in this poem really happened, is exactly the truth. I wouldn't lie to you or my readers. So it's a 9/11 trilogy. These are poems that represent the decades. So when it happened, 10 years later, and then 20 years later, very recently. September 11th, 2001, a knock at my Chatham classroom door. Planes have hit my hometown. Scenes on school TV screens show a sick ticker tape parade. A cruel game of rock, paper, scissors in which paper won. A falling man. Our school day becomes a lesson in tragedy. Parents arrive early to take their children, to hug them, to protect them, to love them. Driving home on Route 28, I look for mushroom clouds in the sky. Arriving home in Brewster, I find my 9-year-old anxious to reach his uncle in the city, but the phone lines are overwhelmed. And so is my brother, crying as the smell of ground zero drifts in. And the sound of F-15s overhead shakes his home. For the next few months, my 4-year-old crashes toy planes into Lego buildings. He wakes from nightmares in which the towers grow up through our house, like sunflowers, like mighty oaks, like a choking vine. Will they crush our house as they come up? He asks tearfully. No, I say, the towers will not come up again. September 11, 2001 not only killed 2,977 innocent lives, it killed innocence. That's the first one. 10 years later, I brought students down to New York, as I often do, and a couple of blocks away from Ground Zero, there's a gentleman who's always seems to be there, and he has a plastic container around his neck, and he collects tips. And he's kind of been nicknamed the World Trade Center Man. I don't know if he's homeless, I don't know if he's disabled in any way, but he's a doll. He's fascinating, he knows everything about that day, and he shows pictures to people. And when you have a chance, you'll see a picture of him talking to my students over there on the board. And so the next poem is 10 years later. With a plastic container around his neck, full of ones, fives, and coins, he reminded us of the pain of 9/11. He's the World Trade Center Man, and he has made the suffering of 3,000 people his own. Just a short one. And then the last one is the most recent trip I took. I brought the kids down again very recently, and I just called it 20 years later, even though we did this 2 years ago pre-COVID, sorry. But frankly, I think it fits. If you've been down there, you know that a new subway station, a new transportation hub has opened. It's white, and the top of it has, and again, there's a picture over there when you get a chance. The top of it has these like wings that go up like this. It's an amazing building both inside and out. If you have a chance to see it, you should definitely go see it. So this one's called 20 Years Later. It's a very short little seed poem, 3 lines. The wings rise to the sky near the place where bodies fell to the ground. And I feel like that's where we are now. We've moved forward, we've moved on. We've been reaching for all kinds of wonderful things. There's hope. We always have hope. The families, the children that lost parents, they've moved on. They've made great lives for themselves. And so that's, when I look at that, you turn from the ground zero and the museums and the waterfalls that head down into the ground and all the names. You turn from that, and the station is over there, and it's these big wings, and I feel like until recently and the mess in Afghanistan, I felt very hopeful, but now I don't know how to feel, to be honest. But I thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. Anybody wants to grab a chair and sit, please feel free to do so. Someone else is coming in. The next presentation is Elaine Ostrander. Many of you know her as an artist. She's got an amazing collection here. She's also recently gotten involved in the ukulele club. She is going to lead us in
America the Beautiful.
America the Beautiful.
Did I say God bless America?
Lisa Forte-Doyle. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I could put the music on the stand.
I can get music.
Oh, we have a music stand. Yeah, Diane's getting you a music stand. Please have a seat, folks. Diane is suffering with a boot on her leg.
Oh, jeez.
She is probably the most active person I know, and this is not easy for her. Others of you that have just come in, this woman here, Marianne O'Neil, for those of you who didn't hear, she's not here today because she was rushed to the hospital for the 8th time this year. Her artwork is amazing. There is a get well card if anyone would like to sign it, and I think it would mean a lot to her. So now we're all set for America. Okay, oh good.
I'd like to read the words to America the Beautiful first, in case you forget. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, where amber waves of glow, her purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. O beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and every gain divine. O beautiful for patriot dream that seems beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. I will break my neck sitting. This is a banjo-ellie. It's a small banjo that plays like a ukulele. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains, majesties above the fruited plains. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for heroes in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and every aim divine. Oh, beautiful vocation that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Thank you. I think we'll take a break now, let you all take a look at the work. Dianne, Ierardi, an amazing artist. She's done the 4 paintings between the windows. Those are my pieces that I did 18 and 19 years ago. This group, I've already explained, she's in the hospital. There is a card for Get Well. Elaine Ostrander, who just performed for us. These are her wonderful paintings. There are prints of her 9/11 watercolor that are purchased very reasonably. So please get up, introduce yourselves, and take a look. When more people come, we will have more performance. And if anybody wants to share a remembrance of that day.
I think Jim should. He was there, he saw it. Jim.
Jim.
Jim was.
Jim. We got
I mean, he had the, he was.
Wow.
I didn't see it like he was in the classroom.
This is Jim Miller and Robin Miller. Jim saw what happened on 9/11.
It was not another day on the Cape.
No.
9/11 happened to have been on the last, what they call it now?
Path train?
Yeah, the PATH train. Okay.
Oh, right, yeah.
Last PATH train that went from New York to New Jersey. I worked in New Jersey at the time. And when I got to the office, which is on the other side of the Hudson River, it's got to be about 5 or 6 miles across.
I'm losing my hearing.
Okay, fine.
No, you get the
No,
mic.
into the mic.
Into the mic.
Oh, louder, okay. So, that morning, I'm on the train, and I get to New Jersey, and I'm looking out the window, and one of the tower buildings is already on fire. And the flame was so brilliant, it just seemed to be touching our window, and we're in New Jersey on the other side of the Hudson River. If you don't know New York and the size of these tower buildings, on a regular business day, if I'm going from New York to New Jersey, I pass the tower buildings, it would take you about 5 minutes to walk around one of the tower buildings. I mean, the complete square. And then there are all the vendors that either sold hot dogs, frankfurters, clothing, taxi cabs, cars, trucks. I mean, literally tons of people that are walking around these tower buildings daily on top of working in the building, working in that neighborhood. What I found to me was the act of God itself, was that those two tower buildings came down, straight down this way. Had they gone in either direction, Manhattan would have been destroyed. There's no doubt about it, because Wall Street, all that would have been knocked out by even if one of the buildings had gone down there. I did witness the second airplane hitting the second tower building. And I tell you, it looked like a regular plane was gonna just pass by, except for the explosion, and then that second brilliant flash of light that looks like if I had touched the window of the office that we had in New Jersey, I would have felt my fingers burning. I mean, it just was that brilliant, all right? So, we didn't even get a chance to leave the office until around 11:30 that night, and this stuff happened earlier during the day, but transportation just basically came to a stop. One of the things I remember was that it was about 2 weeks in a row after the actual buildings came down, that the ashes alone from the buildings maintained the actual height of the two tower buildings, but it was all dust. You could still see through it, but you can see where those buildings were for clearly 2 weeks after that fall of those two buildings. And then they ended up putting the lights on to try and represent where the structures were. We did feel the pounding of the floor by floor of those tower buildings going down, and this is across the river in New Jersey, which is, like I said, it's about 5 miles across from New York, Lower Manhattan. It was, I don't know, it was bittersweet, because that was one of the tallest buildings we had. They were landmark buildings, and the amount of people that were in those buildings, I think one tower building had something like 16 elevators, because the banks of elevators went to lower levels, and the next bank went to the higher levels, and another bank went to the top levels. And at the bottom of each of those tower buildings, which went underground, there must have been about 1, 2, 3, 4 levels of shopping, stores to go to, vendors for hot dogs, newspapers, 4 levels of that, and then under that was the PATH train that would take you to New Jersey. Okay, so there was a whole world that was not only just in the top part of those tower buildings, but underneath those tower buildings too. Okay, so just to give you an idea of how great and tremendous this was. So when these buildings came down, and you're talking about all the people that are on the ground level, and the buildings coming down, people are jumping out the buildings because, why? Because these skyscrapers don't have windows that open. It's made that way. Okay, you can see out, but everything is air conditioned, okay? So it was a living hell to actually see, because our buildings were across the Hudson, but we weren't on fire like these other two tower buildings were. And like I said, with all those elevators and staircases and just people alone in the building and people on the ground. Okay, so anyway, that's just a little piece of what I actually went through. And then getting to work was, the regular way of getting to work changed altogether. So we had to come into New Jersey from a different side, because I'm still living in New York, but working in New Jersey. But that's just a little piece of how tremendous that event was. So if it helped to bring back remembrance, yes.
So like you were in the office building that you worked then until you said like 11 o'clock. So what was it like for all of you being there together during that day and not knowing?
Work stopped because literally, and I'm talking about maybe 60 people that were on the floor that I'm in, and the building that I'm in is maybe 10 stories tall. But we're in New Jersey looking at New York, okay? But work just stopped. It was so incredible just to see, I'm telling you, that flame was so brilliant, it seemed as if it was like literally right in front of our window. And we are 5 miles across from New York where the actual towers came down. And also then there's the whole skyline that changed, because overnight, all of a sudden those towers are missing. You know how many lights were in that building at night? So they give you a whole different...
Yeah, that's what you want to know. Like, what were the people conversations? What was that like being in there? What were people talking about? What were they doing all those hours that you were there looking and experiencing and wondering?
Eventually we had to get back to work.
No, but what did it was like you guys talking about? What did you say? Well, you know, that part.
They said, oh gee, holy crap.
I think the major thing that
A lot of
ran
words you
through
can't say right now.
a lot of people's minds that were immediately, at work with me was like, are we gonna be able to even get home through this stuff?
Right.
Okay. On top of all the death that I mean, any of the New Yorkers and there was a lot of New Yorkers that worked in Jersey, okay, and I was with Bank of Tokyo at the time. But you can feel how many lives were lost, because if you walk through that, I can tell you, it's 5 minutes to walk around one of those tower buildings. And I tried to explain what's under and then what's above and then what's around it. And it was a no-win situation. And if those buildings had fallen in any other angle than straight down, Manhattan would have been done. Wall Street done would have been, for sure. All the way straight down to the ferry. So, but any other questions I can try and give you a little piece of the action for that day?
I came in late, my apologies, and thank you to whomever set this up, and thank you for...
I can't hear you.
All right. It's actually a question for you.
The question's for you.
Oh!
Yeah.
I'm thinking you had it, okay.
No, thank you everyone for setting this up, and I came in late, my apologies. So you were downtown.
I was over.
Did you see a plane?
Can't hear you. Could you see?
Did you see the plane, did you say?
Yeah, did
Yeah.
you see a
I saw
plane?
the second plane going into the building, into the second tower. When I got to work that morning, I had to be there at 9 o'clock. That first plane was already on fire in the first tower building. Within about maybe a half hour after I'd been in the office looking at the flame, we saw the second building, the second plane. It looked like it would just pass right behind the tower building, like it normally does, and it disappears and it reappears. No, this one went into the building. You can see the explosion. You can see the wings coming down, okay, from that building. And if you knew what was on the ground, and I was saying before that it's about a 5-minute walk to go around any one of those tower buildings. On top of them being skyscrapers, there was 4 or 5 levels of stores below them underground, and then under that was the PATH train entrance to go to New Jersey. So it wasn't just the top of the building, it was a whole network of people and businesses and street vendors and cabs and buses, cars, just the usual traffic in the city. Was a tremendous amount of people going through that area on a regular basis. And when they came down, does that answer the question?
Absolutely. Thank you.
I have a response to Jim, because our son, Ronald, was living in New York at the time, and our niece was also living in New York. They could not get out of the city for a week because all transportation was locked down, and they desperately wanted to. By the time they got to the Cape, our son Ronald kept pacing back and forth and saying, "Mom, they tried to kill us. They tried to kill us." And then he'd start to go upstairs, and then he'd turn around, and he'd wander in another direction. Then he'd turn around. It was really the shock that we saw on these two kids was incredible. Many of you may have something to say. I'm going to introduce next.
I want to add something to that.
I can't hear.
He wants to add something to that.
I was reminded of this because of the Cranberry Festival going on tomorrow.
Next weekend.
Next weekend, yeah.
But the fireworks is when?
Next Saturday night.
Next Saturday?
Right,
Okay.
yes, it's tough.
When he came to visit with us that day, that we finally got up to the Cape, the Cranberry Festival was going to be taking place. I don't remember exactly. I can't remember the day and the sequence and so on, but it was shortly after he arrived on the Cape, after being unable to get out of the city for that week. And we said, let's go to the fireworks. And he said, are you kidding? And we thought it would be a kind of a happy occasion, people getting together, you know, and up in the field behind the high school. And he said, I can't do that. You don't understand what it was like to see like Jim was saying, the heat of that, the brightness of the light, the explosion, the noise, the sound. I couldn't go to a fireworks right now.
Yeah.
And I had an immediate thought when I read in the paper about the fireworks this year. It just struck me in the wrong way. I'm sorry. I just felt like I don't want to go to fireworks. You know, I mean, there's something about fireworks. We live by the Bank Street Beach. Everybody has fireworks on the 4th of July against the law, but they do it anyway. Yeah. It's fun, you know, all that kind of stuff. But there's something about this fireworks. It just has a bad feel to me, bad taste in my mouth. And I know some of you folks have been working on the Cranberry Festival here in Harwich, but it's just, well, anyway, that's a little addition to the story.
Reverend, a few towns have now, they're doing fireworks that make no sound.
Yes.
For some of them, because veterans with PTSD
Right.
have trouble, animals have had trouble
Exactly, yep.
So that's starting to happen, and frankly, I don't need the sound. I just want to see these things. So at least somebody doesn't want to go, they're not going to still hear it in their house.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
Yes,
that
I
is
see that.
happening.
Yep. Anyway, thanks for
Yeah.
reminding me about that.
That's true.
Thanks so much. I'm going to have Mary Dulemba come forward, and Dianne, our pastor, Dianne Carpenter, is going to come forward and accompany Mary Dulemba, and she's going to be singing.
This is my song.
I can't hear you.
My song.
This is my song. Thank you.
I'm going to let you get there, Mary, so that I can see where you are.
You'll recognize the melody. This is a prayer, really. This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and wide. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hope. hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and vine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine. This is my prayer, O Lord of all earth's kingdoms. Thy kingdom come, on earth thy will be done. Let Christ be lifted up till all shall serve him, and hearts united learn to live as one. Oh, hear my prayer, thou God of all the nations. Myself I give thee, let thy will be done.
Thank you, Mary and Diane. Anyone else want to share something, or should we at this point walk around, talk to the artists, and look at their work? It would be nice to have that time, okay?
Yeah.
Somebody else? Good, Julia. Julia Johnson is the vice president of the Zion Union Heritage Museum. We love Julia, and her husband we love as well. Larry is sitting there with her. And of course, the Millers are part of the Zion Union Heritage Museum. It's a nice plug for the museum. There you go.
In 2017, I was asked to be a keynote for a memorial observance in the town of Yarmouth. And it's been sitting in my phone and sitting in different places. I thought it was time to kind of resurrect it. So I sent it to my kids today. And I had the addendum to it, which was that I was asked by Maureen Tweed Bedford to speak at the Town of Yarmouth Memorial Observance on September 11th, 2017. That day I met veteran Isabel Slifer, who had survived the Pentagon attack. And that was quite an experience. She is now fighting with dementia. And it was my honor to make the following remarks. Thank you to the community of Yarmouth, and especially the police department, for inviting me to speak today. Former President George W. Bush, on November 11th, 2001, said the following: "Time is passing, yet for the United States of America, there will be no forgetting September the 11th. We will remember every rescuer who died in honor. We will remember every family that lives in grief. We will remember the fire and ash, the last phone calls, the funerals of the children." End quote. How true these words are 16 years later. What do you remember about that day? I want to share a few of my memories. Some may mirror your own. I remember my husband Larry calling me at the Dennis Yarmouth Regional High School Library to say, "Turn on the news. The tower's been hit." What are you talking about? What tower? How? How? Who? I remember turning on the TV and being dismayed and shocked. I remember School Superintendent Tony Parentozzi instructing staff to turn televisions off. I didn't. I couldn't. My niece, working in New York City. Where is she? Is she safe? We saw first responders rushing in and terrorized citizens rushing out. Then the next strike, we watched, we prayed, we tried to understand, we grieved. I remember telling our daughter, Claire, an 18-year-old freshman at Tufts University, to stay in place and follow directions of the campus police. As it became known that one flight originated in Boston, my mother fear kicked into overdrive. Go get her. Bring her home. Her Army veteran dad responding, we don't know enough. She's safe on campus. And then he called our contact at the Tufts Police Department for reassurance. I remember the first responders in New York, DC, and around the country. How many of them will never know how thankful and grateful we are for their courage and bravery that day, for days to come, and every day. I also remember our trip to see the Tribute and Lights, the 2 vertical blue lights in New York City that first appeared in March 2002. To me, it was a visual reminder of when America was attacked in my lifetime on our own soil by unknown, fear-inducing enemies. But most vivid for me is remembering Julie Sweeney, a first-year teacher at Dennis Yarmouth Regional High School, whose husband Brian was on United Airlines Flight 175, a plane that hit the World Trade Center South Tower. 2 years married, having worked only a few days as a health and physical education teacher, she was one of us, our community, our school. This message, left on her answering machine just before 9 a.m. on September 11th, 2001. Quote, "Hey Jules, it's Brian. I'm on a plane and it's hijacked and it doesn't look good. I just wanted to let you know that I love you and I hope to see you again. If I don't, please have fun in life and live your life the best you can. Know that I love you and no matter what, I'll see you again." End quote. I couldn't imagine her pain, but I ached for her.
Yes, yes.
I remember the Yarmouth Police and Fire Departments, the Yarmouth Department of Public Works, the DY District, along with friends, relatives, and strangers, coming together for a Viking send-off in honor of her husband, former Navy Lieutenant Brian Sweeney. I remember our shock as a community, and our coming together to help her and us heal, even if just a little. I have been to the 9/11 Memorial in New York City, a somber, breathtaking place, with the soothing water of the memorial reflecting pools, and a peacefulness that is consuming and compelling. I remember Brian David Sweeney, a man I never met, and reflected on the many others who died. Julie Sweeney has remarried, has a family, and is very involved with the 9/11 Museum. I honor her today for her resiliency and determination. I honor all first responders who, by virtue of what they do and who they are, much like our military, are willing to give their lives for us every day. I remember them, and by your presence, I know you remember them as well. In closing, former President Barack Obama, on the 15th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, said the following: "We remember and we will never forget the nearly 3,000 beautiful lives taken from us so cruelly, including 184 men, women, and children here, the youngest just 3 years old. We honor the courage of those who put themselves in harm's way to save people they never knew. We come together in prayer and in gratitude for the strength that has fortified us across these 15 years. And we renew the love and the faith that binds us together as one American family." Thank you again, America, Cape Cod, Yarmouth, for continuing to remember. we must never forget, and we must teach our children about the day terrorism arrived in our daily lives.
Thank you. Thank you, Julia. Anyone else before we start talking to the artists? More people are coming and going. It's that kind of a day. Somebody's pointing. Elaine.
I'd like to say how my painting developed, and there's a special message in the painting that...
Can you get to the front?
Yeah, I'm going to bring a print up so I can show it.
I could actually hand it to her. You can sit. I have the mic for you. Sit down.
Oh, okay. After I got up.
I know, sorry. This is Elaine Ostrander. She's the artist that did the artwork here on this wall, and she's going to tell you a little bit about it.
This is actually an amazing story. I'll never forget it. Obviously, I painted it. When I painted it here on the Cape, I lived in Stoughton at the time, but I just had to come to the Cape because of the solitude that I would find here. My son has given me all these ideas, Ma, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and I kept saying, it's going to be my painting, I'll do what I want. But I was fortunate to have seen this photograph in the paper, I guess, or on TV, and I acknowledged it, that these 3 firemen that I put into the image here. I wanted to show the towers, so I put them in her crown of the Statue of Liberty. And her arm raised up holds the torch, but it also, I'm trying to remember exactly what it does show. It shows the torch being held, but it shows something else. It's like her arm is in 2 different places. And the ribbons around the planes acknowledge the planes. In the back here, I put the United States of America across the windows of the tower. And it reminded me of the raising of the flag in Iwo Jima and the sorrow of the people. But the most amazing part of this painting, and I didn't do it, I didn't write it, but the name Jesus appears in the leg of this firefighter. And someone pointed that out to me after I had finished the painting. I never wrote the word, but you can see it there.
Wow.
So I get chills every time I tell this story. And one day, down here on the Cape, it was like a monsoon like we recently had. Someone was having a yard sale in my neighborhood, and I said, oh my God, they're having a yard sale? I better go, maybe, it's inside. And there was a Weber grill there. I thought it said $5. I found out later when I went to go pay for it that it said $50. But the woman said, please take it, because I don't want to take it back to New York. So when she mentioned the word New York, I went back to my home, I got her one of these prints, and I brought it to her. And she immediately teared up, and she said her very best friend was the priest that died in the rubble there. I just can't tell you how that affected me. After that, the hospital where they were taking survivors and injured people, they called and asked if I would send them a print of this, which I did. And I do believe that the firehouse nearby there has a copy of this print. And the gentleman here, who I made the tallest, emailed me and said, thank you for making me the tallest. I actually was the shortest. So that's my story about how I did this painting. My town of Stoughton printed these lithographs. We sold them at that time for $30, and we sent over $6,000 to New York. I still have prints.
These lovely prints are only $20. Gorgeous. I think this is a good precedent. I want Anne Ierardi to come forward, and you may talk about your work. Come forward. Not that you're not used to public speaking. The work she has done is between the windows, so you'll have to crane your neck once in a while.
Hello. I guess it's still morning, so you can say good morning. I'm Ann Ierardi, and I have some of the work back there. Just a couple of words about the work. The piece on this was something that I did many years ago when I was trying to bring together abstract work and at the same time a religious theme, which is in the background there, and I call it Stargazes. The next one I call Tragedy. It just feels like the mass there feels like a Greek tragedy, and it just seemed to connect. The next one is called Resurrection, which I actually painted in Provincetown from a model, but it speaks to me of resurrection. It was a time when 3 people that I cared about had died. That it was a September time, and I painted that. And then this one over here is a recent work that I called The City because I had 2 very close friends in Manhattan, and whenever I went to New York, my friend would tell me which plays to go see, and Stan and Loie, and they would say, well, then they would all call and say, when are you coming to the city? So New York to me is always the city. And I just share this, which I'll put up over here. But this is a picture of Kelly Chapel in Yarmouth Court, and some of you might know this little chapel. And it was built by David Kelly in 1873 for his daughter Rosa, who taught biblical classes, Bible classes for children of the poor. And this is my reflection on 9/11. My memory is a visual. The morning of 9/11/01, my brother from Los Angeles and my mother came to visit. They heard the news as they crossed the bridge onto the Cape. I still picture the 3 of us in my living room, watching the incredulous sight of the fallen towers. The next day I met with a woman, a flight attendant. Over the past year I had assisted her in discerning whether to return to work. She had been having some health issues, and she had been in the airlines for many, many years, so she was trying to figure out whether to retire. But 9/11 was a turning point. Her route was the same as the plane crashed into the Pentagon, and so the crew who perished were co-workers and friends of hers. A week later in Kelly Chapel, her and I, we planned this service just for pilots and flight attendants. I remember them from American and United Airlines, and they gathered in uniform to mourn their losses and honor their heroes. It was a very small group, but a very special time. I will never forget the men and women in uniform, the deep sadness that pervaded the chapel. What a privilege to share and to organize this and officiate the service, to share this moment of intimacy and offer a time of solace. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. I'm going to continue with my work. Just dawned on me, those are my icons of 9/11. At the back, there is a book that you can purchase with a donation of $10. It has all 8 icons in this book. The book began in this church. The icons began in this church. Reverend Elizabeth McClintock was the pastor at the time. She passed away earlier this year. We had a Bible study class. And I was also at Star Gallery. Star Gallery decided we're going to do a theme of red. I walk into church the next Sunday, it's Pentecost. Got the message. So that is my Pentecost painting, the very first one. Laurie Moore, who is a member of this church, posed for it. It has medallions at the back with all the places which I witnessed the Holy Spirit at work in the world. there's Gandhi, there's Jesus, there are the 9/11 first responders in the very bottom lower left corner. Everybody in our Bible study class signed the back of one of those descending doves representing the Holy Spirit. They were thrilled to be able to do it. They're the only ones that know which one theirs is, because they were decoupaged in. I did the rest of them, most of them I did 18 years ago, 19 years ago, right after 9/11. The one I'm going to speak about, I could take too long to talk about all of them, but the one on the cover, called "These Bones Shall Live," struck me as we looked at the message at the wreckage. "These Bones Shall Live" is the third one from the left and on the cover of this booklet. Ezekiel 37:5. "Thus says the Lord to these bones, I will cause breath to enter you, and you shall live." The spirit figure in this painting represents the spirit of America, the Holy Spirit that galvanized us as a nation. Not nationalism, mind you. Nationalism implies political and military might. The Holy Spirit always becomes a reality when we find ourselves helpless and powerless. The power of love that gripped the nation, the love that transcended race, age, and profession, rose up out of the ashes of 9/11. We were united as never before. The remnants of buildings looked like bones. The skeletal structure appears to be all that remains. The bones you can see in the hands of the spirit figure reach into the rubble as if being x-rayed. The rich red blood of the people of America flows through the veins of the Spirit. All of these are based on Scripture. We'd be happy to have you pick up a copy. I'm thrilled with how they came out. They've been sitting on a shelf for 10 years. They get pulled out every 10 years or so. But this was a special occasion, because I'm sure all of you are saturated with what we've been watching on TV about 9/11. And I've learned so much more than I did know. Flight 93 that decided they would go down with the plane rather than go and hit the White House or hit the Pentagon. Amazing conversations that we have all heard. I had not heard before this year. Mothers who were pregnant on the day that 9/11 occurred, talking to the children who never knew their father or their mother. I guess men couldn't be pregnant then, but so they never knew who their father was. Incredible things that we learn about this country, which is a wonderful country, and certainly can be changed because we are a democracy. Thank you. Feel free to look at this. Thank you. Anybody else? You can just get up and walk. Oh, I still have to point out one. My mother wouldn't forgive me. Mother was 91 when she painted that little triptych as a tribute to the first responders. That was in 2002 that she did that. She died in 2007 at the age of 96. And she's a marvelous folk artist. I have many of her. We did books together and had a wonderful 8.5 years while she lived with us. But anything more?
You want to say something about Shirley Gomes and the
Oh, thank
conversation?
you. There's a picture there of me with Shirley Gomes. I was hoping she would be here today. She's the former state representative of this state, obviously. Her husband is very ill. She's at the hospital every day, so she doesn't think she's going to get here. Obviously, she won't. But you can see that she was responsible for getting these 8 icons into the State House in 2003. So, anything else? Anyone else want to say anything? Yes?
You want me to come to the mic, or am I good?
I'm sorry, I can't hear
Should
you.
I come up to the microphone?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm finding that I'm not the only one that's losing my hearing, so I'm an advocate for anyone who can't hear.
A few little tidbits. This is what I tell my students. A lot of people don't realize, especially up here, that more people have died since 9/11 because of 9/11 from lung diseases. And if you ever feel like I want to do something, I feel like people suffered and I'm helpless, I couldn't do anything. Yes, of course, always support our military. there's so many great organizations, but they have commercials. But we really don't hear a whole lot about the emphysema and the lung cancer and the COPD that so many New Yorkers, in fact, I remember my husband wanted to go down a few days later to help. There was so many people, so many friends of mine went down to just help recover bodies. They weren't just professional first responders. And my father called, when he heard that, when he got wind of that, he called my husband up here and he said, "Don't you dare come down. You have a family, you don't know what's in that air, you don't know what everybody's breathing in. You just let the professionals, do it. They know how to protect themselves," which now we know that even that didn't work. So I just remember that, how 9/11, it was such a big part of our lives. So my husband was really like, "Oh, I want to go down, I want to go down." Another little tidbit, but he didn't. Another little tidbit. I don't know if you heard the story about the survivor's tree. If you ever go down to the museum, and I still call it Ground Zero, a tree that was outside of the World Trade Center was just almost completely destroyed. If you ever see, this is all on YouTube, you can all Google all of this, those of you who use computers. And there's a book, I have the book, I keep it in my classroom. This tree was down to just the trunk. I mean, no leaves, no green, this tree was destroyed like everything else. And somebody said, "I think I can save it." And they brought it up to the Botanical Gardens, the New York Botanical Gardens, and they nursed that tree back to life. About 10 years later, they brought it down to where the pools are, where the waterfalls are. And to this day, it's known as the survivor's tree. It brings a lot of hope to people. You can touch it. Every time I go down, I touch it. There is a little fence around it to protect it. So you'll know it because all the trees are not fenced, but this one is. And I just love to just stand there and keep my hand on the trunk because it just gives me a good feeling. I had a friend who was a carpenter, and the day of 9/11, that morning, he was working for some reason, he was up on a roof with other construction guys. I don't know how construction works, but he was up, and his major memory is what the second plane went right over them. Like they were on the roof of this skyscraper, well, maybe not a very tall skyscraper, but a tall building, one of the older buildings in New York City, working. And this plane went right over, and he says, "That never happens." And so, but he has had nightmares of just that loud sound over his head, I'm 60, he's about 61, 62, a grown man having these kinds of nightmares. A lot of us up here just don't realize. I'm just speaking from my old city right now, the traumas that just regular people, these are not military people, these are not veterans with PTSD, these are just ordinary people, and how they still live with this stuff 20 years later. So I wanted to mention if you online, you can probably find funds, different organizations that help people years later. My parents' former landlord, I should say landlady, excuse me, she lost her son, and she was one of the people that spoke to Congress looking for, we need help for help. So I'm just speaking from my old city, that's all. I just wanted to get that across to you. And it's not even just down there. Chatham High School, one of our kids, Taylor Fry, she lost her dad. He was on the first plane. So it really affected a lot more people than people realize. So if you get down there, go see the survivor tree, give it a little touch, hopefully make you feel good. And if you really want to do something, remember people dealing with the lung issues who did try to help that day and are now dying. Honestly, the numbers are like 4,000 something people have died just from breathing in those clouds, that asbestos, and God only knows what else was in that building. and they are still suffering, so thank you very
I heard a
much.
figure of 64,000 people have received, have been interacted with the fund for health issues from that. 64,000 people. And some of them are international folks from something like 13 countries. That was in the news this morning.
Wow, thank you, I didn't even realize we had that. Thank you, I just wanted to throw that up there.
I can't help but ask you, Diane, I remember, what's the title of your sermon tomorrow?
Ashes, ashes falling down.
That's it. There, you got it. Anyone else? Yes.
Okay.
Ruth. Ruth Zeller.
Yeah, just caught up here.
You want me to, well,
No, that's okay. I'll just lean on him. Pick it up.
yeah, Ruth has been in and out of the hospital.
I just wanted to say that every 9/11, I get chills that are unbelievable. A few days before 9/11, Bruce and I had flown back from Boston to Maui because he had to get his clothing changed and get some stuff together because he was on the Hawaiian board for Habitat for Humanity, and he was going to go to a jamboree for Habitat. And at 3:30 in the morning, my dad called me to say, the world is blown up, the world is ending. And I turned on the TV and realized that the flight that was heading from Boston to LA is the one that we had been on just a few days before. So it just brings chills. And then he was in Chicago when this happened at the airport hotel, and he gets up and it's like dead silence. Chicago O'Hare Airport is never dead silent. Nothing was moving. He said it was the spookiest thing he had ever seen in his life. And thank God we had lived in Chicago and had friends that he could go stay with until he found a bus to go to the jamboree. So anyway, it just gives me chills.
Thank you for sharing. It's not easy to remember, but it's important to remember.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Let's not let things happen like happened in the Holocaust where people were in it.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. Anyone else? I think it's time to stretch, get up, take a walk, look around and take a look at the artwork and talk to the artists, and we would be happy. And there is also that sign, the card that you can sign for an artist who's not here.